That will be on the library's YouTube channel. So, without further ado, I present John Kenrick, one of our favorite speakers, and we're really excited to have him again. So, welcome, John.
Thank you, Marilyn. It is really great to be here with all of you tonight and to be celebrating a cat. Now, those of you who know me know that I'm a cat dad. There are 10 cats that share my partner and my home. I should say, who allow my partner and I to share their home with them, if you know anything about cats. But one cat that had one hell of a home in Hollywood was this cat, Leo the lion, one of the greatest emblems in Hollywood history. And it was no accident. Let's get right into the story that we're going to be talking about. Let me bring up the slideshow because we're going to be talking about MGM, Metro Goldwyn Mayer, the greatest studio of Hollywood's golden age. But before we do, let me just say this. Tonight's talk and this whole series I'm doing is for Morristown Library. And whether you have, like me, are privileged to live in Morristown and have this awesome library, or wherever you may be, tuning in from or zooming in from, libraries are arguably one of the greatest resources of any democratic society. They are a place where anyone, regardless of income or class, race or sex or gender identification, can come in and learn and grow and be exposed to culture in all of its wonders. So please, wherever you are, support your local library with your time, with your love, with a check. Let's keep these great institutions thriving, in particular, the wonderful Morristown and Morris Township Library right here. But we're going to be talking tonight about a lost, amazing place. Metro Goldwyn Mayer wasn't just another Hollywood studio. Every academic, every film buff, from Spielberg to Truffaut, agrees that Metro Goldwyn Mayer was the Tiffany studio of Hollywood's golden age. It was a place where the dreams that you dared to dream really did come true. The story of MGM begins in 1924. Most of us weren't around, so let's take a look at what the world was like. That year, Calvin Coolidge was re-elected president of the United States. Not a very exciting man. His only memorable quote was, "The business of America is business." He was the Republicans' Republican at that time. Vladimir Ilyich Lenin dropped dead, and many did not mind. This man who had led the Bolshevik Revolution in 1918 and had ordered the assassination of the Tsar and his family and had turned Russia into the first attempt at communism in the world, was not mourned by many who knew him. The very first Chrysler rolled off the assembly line here in the United States. Forest Hills completed construction of its new tennis stadium, which is now primarily a concert venue. Paul Whiteman, that great band leader, had a jazz concert in New York where he introduced young composer George Gershwin's new creation, Rhapsody in Blue. Little Orphan Annie, the comic strip, made its debut in the New York Daily News, and Sandy said "arf" for the very first time in print. And silent films were the most popular art form ever known to mankind. Everybody went to them. And the wonderful thing was that because they were silent, you didn't have to worry about dubbing movies. You just changed the language on the cards between scenes, and a film could be shown anywhere in the world. The trouble was, with so many theaters and so many theater goers looking for product, who could turn out enough? Well, Marcus Lowe was the head of Metro Films. Louis B. Mayer had his own organization, the Mayer Studio. A man named Shmuel Goldfish, better known as Sam Goldwyn, was the head of the Goldwyn studio operation. And in New York, there was a Broadway producer named Edgar Selwyn. If you've ever been to the American Airlines Theater, that was originally the Selwyn Theater. These four men banded together to create one super studio that could turn out, for the first time ever, the equivalent of one major feature film for every week of the year. They purchased what had been the Ince Triangle Studio Complex in Culver City, outside of Los Angeles, and the new Metro Goldwyn Mayer became a movie-making factory like no other. Here was the founding day when they opened their gates for the first time, April 17th, 1924. The merger celebration was held just a few weeks later on April the 26th. Up there you see Abraham Lur and the two men who would be running this studio, Louis B. Mayer, the mayor of Metro Goldwyn Mayer, and the man who was the director of all production, Irving Thalberg. This man, Howard Dietz, would be one of the great powers behind the powers. He was a famous songwriter. You may have heard of Schwartz and Dietz. They wrote, among other things, the song That's Entertainment. Well, here you see him with one of the studio's biggest stars, Lassie. Well, not only was he a great songwriter, he was a great publicist, and he was the head of publicity at MGM. He was the one who said MGM needs a mascot. It needs an emblem. It needs a symbol that says MGM. And the symbol he chose was a roaring lion, Leo, as he is affectionately known. And they took the motto of Goldwyn's film company, Ars Gratia Artis, which is Latin for art for art's sake. And even in silent days, Leo roared 3 times. Why? Because that's what that lion did when they turned on a camera one day. And years later, when they had to redo the opening credits for sound films, they had a hell of a time getting him to roar 3 times in just the right amount of time. But that version you could see at the beginning of almost every MGM film. Now, Louis B. Mayer ran the studio. He was God. Irving Thalberg, who was all of 24 years of age, was the actual head of production. So it was his job to handle the details of the making of each specific film. Between these two, there was a third character, Nick Schenck. You see, Marcus Lowe, the founder of the company, who I mentioned earlier, died very soon after the company was founded, and Nick Schenck became the head of corporate operations in New York City. He was a deceitful son of a you-know-what. And at one point, he almost sold the studio out from under everyone's control to Mr. Fox over at Fox Studios. But Louis B. Mayer found out about it, used his political connections to have the deal boshed, and these 3 men would have a stormy relationship from that point on. But storms or not, between the 3 of them, MGM was an incredibly well-run operation. Louis B. Mayer's motto, make it big, do it right, give it class. And that's something that MGM actually tried to do. Ethan Morton, a great entertainment historian, has written that at MGM, filmmaking was an assembly line of departments, each answerable to a producer, each producer answerable to the head of production, Thalberg, and each head answerable to Mayer. The first big movie that they turned out was one that had already been in the works at one of the studios, Ben-Hur. This is a black and white version. It's silent. Some scenes in it are in color, some are in black and white. Ramon Navarro, the great gay Mexican star, plays the title role. Francis X. Bushman plays the evil, the evil bad guy who he is up against in the famous chariot race. If you ever see that this is on Turner Classic Movies, see it. You'll be surprised at what an exciting film it still is. Greed, produced by Erich von Stroheim. This man wanted to film every page of the novel McTeague. The result was a film that would have taken about 10 hours to watch. They cut it down to 2 hours. No one knows what happened to that other footage. It was simply trashed. What's there is brilliant. It would have been even more brilliant had they let it be. Now, Louis B. Mayer, on a trip to Europe, discovered Greta Gustafsson. He told her, before you come to the U.S., lose a few pounds. Americans don't like their girls fat. That's something he would say to almost every female star he would ever work with. He brought her to America, changed her name to Greta Garbo. It took a little while to figure out what to do with her, but by the time they had cast her in the 1926 film Flesh and the Devil, they had encountered a film personality who just burned through celluloid. Here is a love scene between these two great performers, Greta Garbo and John Gilbert, who were falling in love in reality off screen. So this is quite realistic as well as acting. What a beautiful reminder that silent films were not silent. In large theaters in big cities, you had full orchestras providing accompaniment like you heard there. In your local neighborhood theater, it could be anything from a pipe organ to a stand-up piano. By 1927, after just a few years in operation, MGM was the top-grossing studio in Hollywood, a position it would retain for the next 3 decades. The Student Prince, one of the most famous Broadway musicals of that decade. MGM turned out a silent version starring Ramon Navarro and Norma Shearer. I've seen it. It's utterly delightful. Again, if this is ever on Turner, treat yourself to it. It's great fun. And Ramon Navarro was one handsome, handsome star. In 1926, the head of the studio, Irving Thalberg, married Norma Shearer. Her career would never suffer as a result. She got a lot of great roles that she otherwise might have seen go to some other stars. Our Dancing Daughters. Now, that silent film starred a woman who was who immediately became the quintessential Hollywood flapper and took her place among MGM's greats. That woman on top of the table is Lucille LeSueur, better known by her screen name, Joan Crawford, in one of her first major roles. In Variety, in 1928, Irving Thalberg said, "The talking motion picture has its place, but I do not believe it will ever replace the silent drama any more than I believe color will replace black and white." Well, the wunderkind of Hollywood was not often wrong, but boy, was he wrong on those two scores. When the jazz singer hit, it was not an MGM film. It was the Warner Brothers who came through with that innovation. MGM was the last studio to agree to switch over to sound, and it was Nicholas Schenck in New York who ordered that they do so. William Haynes, who was a major silent star at MGM, said, "It was the last night on the Titanic all over again, with women grabbing the wrong children and Louis B. singing 'Nearer, My God, to Thee.'" Norma Shearer's brother, Douglas, came in, told Louis B. Mayer, "I'm an expert about sound technology." He was no such thing, but he faked it until he could make it and gradually became an expert on sound technology and would remain MGM's highly competent manager of film sound until his retirement in the 1950s. Many major stars, like John Gilbert, did not have voices that matched what the public expected from them from their silent performances. His voice was sort of like this, a very elegant but very nasal and very reedy little tenor of a voice, and they did not expect that of him. And that slowly but surely destroyed his popularity. That and some awful scripts. He was totally mishandled in the switchover to sound. His one-time lover, off-screen as well as on, Greta Garbo, who remained his friend in years that followed, she had a much more successful transition. Her first film in sound, Anna Christie, where her very first line was the unforgettable, "Gimme a whiskey and don't be stingy, baby." Her accent all added to her allure. Broadway Melody in 1929 was MGM's first big musical and first Academy Award winner for Best Film. I love musicals, as you probably know, and I have to tell you, if you can watch this film and stay awake from start to finish, you are a greater person than I am, because much as I love musicals, oh Lord, this is a hard one to sit through. It's a very weak backstage musical drama. Now, MGM, from silent era onward, specialized in the art of sneak previews. That meant audiences had shown up to see, let's say they'd shown up to see Boys Town, but instead they would get a sneak preview of a similarly themed film, another male drama, on that night, and then they'd be asked to sign little cards where they gave their opinions of the film. Irving Thalberg said, "Great movies aren't made, they're remade." Other studios would have previews and they'd just say, well, this film is going to sink or swim, that's it. MGM would refilm entire sections of a movie based on the reaction at a preview, which is why many of its films were improved because of the preview system. This reactograph tracks when audiences were responding to the movie Good News. Moment by moment, scene by scene, the executives could look at this and say, here's where the film is stronger, here's where it might need a little bit of help. Now, The Champ was one of the greatest films starring the team of Wallace Beery and young... it's okay, girl. That's okay. And young Jackie Cooper. Beery... Cooper insisted in later years that Wallace Beery was no fun to work with. Not at all, because he was afraid that Cooper was stealing his scenes. So he treated the kid terribly. But he said all anyone ever wanted to hear was, oh yeah, Wallace Beery was a great guy to work with. So most of the time, that's all I would tell them. Thalberg, when he came to see this movie, said, there's a problem. The audience doesn't want to see the father lose and die. Let him win the fight. Then let him die. And the result was a huge moneymaker and one of the biggest hits of 1931. There were a lot of great child stars at MGM. Here you see, just at one corner of the commissary lunch table, Mickey Rooney, Deanna Durbin, who was eventually traded off to Universal Pictures, Judy Garland, and there's Jackie Cooper again. He had a big crush on Judy. We'll talk about that in my talk on Judy later this year. In 1932, to tempt Depression era audiences into theaters. They put together the first ever all-star picture. Look at this talent. Greta Garbo, John Barrymore, Joan Crawford, Wallace Beery, and Lionel Barrymore in Grand Hotel. Helen Hayes said this of Louis B. Mayer. He was a courtly, polished, evil villain. On the surface, a gentle, soft-spoken man, but he was evil. Louis B. Mayer considered everyone at MGM to be his family and for himself to be the father of it all. And heaven help you if you did not agree with father about what you needed to do with your career or with a certain performance. In 1933, while competing with Louis over various things, Irving Thalberg, who had very delicate health, suffered a complete collapse of his health. Mayer, while he was out sick, reorganized the studio, took away Thalberg's job as head of production, demoted him to just being another producer. Well, the following year, after recovering, Thalberg returned, and he produced The Merry Widow with Jeanette MacDonald and Maurice Chevalier. Edward Everett Horton is in the middle. This was a huge musical hit for MGM, and Thalberg said, from now on, let MGM be known as the home of the best musicals in Hollywood. And that would be the case in years to come. He next produced Mutiny on the Bounty with Charles Laughton and Clark Gable. Academy Award-winning, huge box office hit. And Thalberg was back on top, and boy, MGM needed him as much as ever. He also hired the Marx Brothers and brought them to MGM in one of their greatest films, A Night at the Opera. This scene where they're all crowded into that one stateroom. Priceless physical comedy. Thalberg was just on a roll. His next film, The Good Earth, based on Pearl Buck's book about Chinese farmers in ancient China. Oh, what an exquisite film. Paul Muni and Louise Rayner in glorious performances. And although they are made up in Asian makeup, the performances are not ethnic stereotypes. They're beautiful, sensitive portrayals of these characters. On September 2nd of 1936, you see there over on the left-hand side, Norma Shearer is next to her husband, Irving Thalberg. On the other side of Thalberg, you see Douglas Fairbanks Sr. They're at some major Hollywood gala. Well, it was just days later, September 14th, that Irving Thalberg suffered a fatal heart attack and was dead at the age of 37. How evil could Louis B. Mayer be? Well, to answer that question, after Irving Thalberg's funeral, Louis B. climbed into a limousine, turned to the person next to him and said, "Isn't God good to me?" So he could be ruthless when it came to controlling his beloved studio. But say what you will about Louis B. Mayer. Under his direction, the studio thrived like no other studio did ever before or since. He was the one who now perfected the unit system at MGM. That meant that a major producer could choose a group of directors, designers, and actors who would normally work just for them. Here you see the cast of one of the great MGM films, The Women. And by the way, in case you haven't noticed, everyone in The Women is a woman. There's not a single male in the film. Even the dogs are females in that film. Even the horses are females. In the middle, you see, in the lower part of the picture, in the middle, you see Rosalind Russell. She has her hands around the chin of director George Cukor. But there, in between George Cukor and Paulette Goddard, is producer Hunt Stromberg. He was one of the great powerhouses at MGM. Turned out so many great films, including the films of Nelson Eddy and Jeanette MacDonald, which earned millions for MGM, made from operettas that people thought were long past their commercial usage. Now, Arthur Freed, he had been a songwriter for Broadway Melody. In that one, he had turned out such songs as Broadway Rhythm's Got Me, Everybody Dance, The Wedding of the Painted Doll, and of course the song Singin' in the Rain. Well, it was Arthur Freed who went to Louis B. and said, I want to become a producer. And the first film here you see his early work, Broadway Melody and Singing in the Rain. The first film he produced for MGM was The Wizard of Oz. At that point, Louis B. Mayer said, you know what? You've got a free hand. Whatever you want to do, just do it. The next films that he did were a series with Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland. The Hey Kids, Let's Put on a Show movies. Babes on Broadway, Babes in Arms. They are delightful films. Girl Crazy. Wonderful scores. And how delightful these two performers still are. The director for most of those films is the gentleman you see there in the white sweatshirt, Busby Berkeley. Yep, the same Busby Berkeley responsible for 42nd Street and Footlight Parade over at another studio. MGM hired him despite his alcohol problems, and unfortunately, he proved to be a living nightmare for Judy Garland. On more than one occasion, Mickey Rooney had to threaten to punch Berkeley right in the nose if he didn't stop abusing Garland verbally. He just so put her through hell, and eventually led her to her first suicide attempt. That's how difficult working with Busby Berkeley could be. Now, behind the scenes at MGM is where a lot of the magic took place. You've never probably heard this man's name unless you are into show business history. Cedric Gibbons. Every single set to every MGM film from the silent era to the 1950s was signed off on or designed directly by this one man. So every set in The Wizard of Oz, every set in any of in Singing in the Rain, every set in any major MGM film was his work. Thousands upon thousands of sets. He also had assistants who did some of the sets as well. He won more Oscars than any other set designer, and that's appropriate because he also designed the Oscar. That statuette was his creation. He created sets like this for Eleanor Powell and Rosalie, unbelievable fantasies that he brought to believable visual life. Now, here she is doing the number Fascinating Rhythm in the movie Lady Be Good. I want you to see here, we're going to split the screen, and you're going to see the number that Miss Powell was filming, that wonderful dance star. And on the other half of the screen, you're going to see what went on off camera to make the number possible. Watch the ins and outs. This is just fascinating to see.
It took a lot of hard work to make musical production numbers for the big screen. And here's a good example. Eleanor Powell's tap dance to Fascinating Rhythm from Lady Be Good. On the right, we see what went on behind the scenes. Stagehands using little tractors called mules quickly take the set apart, allowing the camera to move forward to follow her dancing.
The narrator there was Gene Kelly.
Rhythm, you got me on the road, fascinating rhythm, I'm all in rhythm. What a mess you're making, the neighbors should know, I'm always shaking like a flipper. Each morning I'm waking up, very happy, just to find that no work has been done. What's a bit better, but now you do wrong, when you start to matter, I'm more happy. Want to take a day off, a couple of weeks, somewhere far away off to make us happy. Oh, how I long to be the man that I used to be. Oh, fascinating rhythm, won't you stop picking on me?
And that's what it took to make that number happen. Now, Adrian, he was the great costume designer at MGM. His real name, Adolph Greenberg from Naugatuck, Connecticut. But he went by the official name of Adrian, and he created costumes we still remember today. He was the one who padded Joan Crawford's shoulders, giving her that distinctive look that she is so remembered for. When they were making The Wizard of Oz, everyone knew that in the original book, illustrator W. W. Denslow had shown what it looked like when Dorothy wore her magic slippers, which in the book are silver slippers. And they were going to do the same thing for Judy Garland in the movie until Adrian said, oh, no, 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 no. On a yellow brick road, silver will simply disappear. You've got to make those magic slippers ruby red and cover it with jewels, cover it with spangles. And of course, they are the most valuable movie prop ever created. More on that later. Here you see the MGM lot in Culver City. Here you had anything and everything that was necessary for the making of movies. You had 6,000 employees working in 150 separate crafts and professions. You had a police department. You had a fire department, all entirely belonging to MGM. You had the largest furniture and prop departments in Hollywood. You had the largest collection of shoes known to exist on the planet Earth. You had the world's largest film lab that could turn out as many copies as you needed of those new films to go all over the world. You also had the finest commissary of any studio in Hollywood. The food was known to be outstanding and incredibly cheap, so that no one would ever want to eat anywhere except right on the studio grounds. Judy Garland, however, Louis B. Mayer always considered her to be somewhat overweight, so there was only one thing he would allow her to eat there: his wife's chicken soup. Everyone knew they could order this, and it was, if you ordered this in the commissary, word would get back to Louis that you were watching your weight and being a good MGM star, because this was designed to fill you without bloating you. They had sets that could recreate anything from the Old West to a New York City side street to a jungle pool in Tarzan. This same pool, you'd adjust the trees, add a showboat, and you had the home for the Cotton Blossom in the 1950s version of Showboat. You also had here the street that Judy Garland grows up on in Meet Me in St. Louis with all of its Victorian houses. And you had Carville. Carville was the town where Mickey Rooney reigned as the son of a judge. And here you see a European village street. Whatever was necessary, the MGM backlot had it. And the heart of MGM was the Thalberg Building, named for Irving Thalberg, called by some the Iron Lung. This was the main executive headquarters of the studio. It still stands today. And it was here that you would come to meet with producers, to sign contracts, or if things were wonderful or not wonderful, you might be called in to meet with Louis B. Mayer himself. MGM claimed it had more stars than there were in the heavens, and they did have more stars, performers whose names could appear above the title, than any other studio in Hollywood. You could spend an entire hour just going through this photo and finding everyone from Van Johnson to Greer Garson to Kate Hepburn to Hedy Lamarr. You name them, they're in there. And all surrounding Papa himself, Louis B. Mayer. But the king of them all, the star of stars at MGM, was Clark Gable. There was no one in who could be truly called his peer. He was adored by everyone at the studio, one or two exceptions, but people loved working with this man. In 1936, Judy Garland got the enviable pleasure of paying a tribute to him at his birthday party, and it was so well received that she recreated this in the movie Broadway Melody of 1936, and this was reused in the movie That's Entertainment with the clips that you see added here.
Dear Mr. Gable, you made me love you. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. You made me love you. And all the time you knew it. I guess you always knew it. You made me happy. Sometimes you made me glad. But there were times, sir, you made me feel so sad. You made me sigh, 'cause I didn't want to tell you. I didn't want to tell you. I think you're grand. That's true. Yes, I do. Deed, I do. You know I do. I don't care what happens. Let the whole world stop. As far as I'm concerned, you'll always be the top. 'Cause you know you made me love you.
Miss Ava Gardner put it this way. Louis B. Mayer liked to think of the studio as one big family. You can guess who the daddy was and who were the kids taking orders. A meeting with LB, I soon came to understand, was to be treated as a kind of a papal encounter. If you were called into Louis B.'s office to convince you to do something, you found him sitting enthroned behind a white Art Deco altar, where you had a little metal chair in which you could sit and worship at the shrine. This office, like everything else in MGM, had been designed by Cedric Gibbons to make Louis look like a potentate, and it certainly worked to his advantage. On one occasion, he had discovered that his exciting new star, Van Johnson, liked boys instead of girls. This was a problem. He wanted Van Johnson to get married. And one night at a party, he heard Van Johnson say, "Gee, my buddy Keenan Wynn is married to the only woman in Hollywood worth marrying." So Louis B. Mayer called into his office Keenan Wynn's wife, Evie. And he said, "Evie, do you love your husband?" She said, "Of course I do." And he said, "Would you like to see him getting better roles?" And she said, "It would sure help us." He said, "Okay, Evie, divorce Keenan, marry Van Johnson. I know you'll like him anyway. And then I will guarantee not only better parts for Van, but better parts for Keenan. He'll always have a job as long as I run MGM." And for better or for worse, Evie Wynn said yes and became Mrs. Van Johnson. She and Van would eventually have a daughter, but Evie Wynn knew all throughout their marriage that he spent his entire time sleeping with members of his own sex, not with her. And eventually that marriage turned south and became rather acrimonious, as you can imagine. But that's the kind of interfering SOB that Louis B. Mayer could be in his stars' personal lives. He did not have to interfere in the lives of the Thin Man and his beloved wife. Oh, William Powell and Myrna Loy became two of the top box office stars of all time in this delightful series. And talk about series stars. Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn. The world is still figuring out the truth about their relationship. We don't know for sure. Was it just a friendship? Was it truly a romance? What was it? It's their mystery, and they took it to their graves. Now, MGM's quiet gold mine were the B-movie series. These were movies that could be turned out for next to nothing and that they knew would make as much money as a big feature film. Lou Ayres, who starred with Lionel Barrymore in the Dr. Kildare films. Lionel Barrymore in a wheelchair as the cantankerous Dr. Gillespie. Well, now, young Dr. Kildare, have you learned your lesson yet? Marvelous, marvelous filmmaking. Johnny Weissmuller and Maureen O'Sullivan in the Tarzan films. Now, here you see Jane's original costume. This set off all kinds of controversies. It was a little too revealing. So after its first appearance, this costume would be replaced by ones that covered up a bit more of Maureen O'Sullivan's rather lovely physical charms. And then there were the Hardy movies, the Hardy family movies. Fay Holden is the wife of Judge Lewis Stone. Their troubled son, Mickey Rooney, gets into all kinds of harmless scrapes, and Dad the judge is there to advise him to be honest and be a good kid, and don't worry, everything will work out just fine. These films could be produced for, let's say, $300,000 and earn $3 to $5 million. That was the kind of profit margin that kept MGM on top. When World War II came along, MGM saw its greatest stars go off to fight. Jimmy Stewart and Clark Gable both served on bombing missions at the front in active duty. Gene Kelly only spent a short time in active duty. They then, for safety's sake, moved him into making films for the Navy. MGM itself turned out some great pictures for wartime morale, including Mrs. Miniver, 1942, Walter Pidgeon, Greer Garson. This film still knocks me over. What a great, for those of us who love English culture and English history, what a powerful film to watch. The young man in the light blue striped suit who you see there playing Mrs. Miniver's son, shortly after this film, Greer Garson married him. I'm not making this up. They were married for a few years. Then there was the one star who stroked her way to fame in Hollywood, literally, swimmer Esther Williams. Her spectacular swimming musicals are unlike anything else created in Hollywood history. They are extraordinary, and they're still fun to watch today. But MGM's musicals, no one could touch them. They were in a class by themselves. Here you see Peter Lawford with his knees up. And just over in the middle of the picture, you see his co-star June Allison in the movie Good News. A 1927 musical turned into a fine late 1940s hit. But by the late 1940s, this box was moving into every living room in America. And then it soon moved into every bedroom in America. And in some cases, moved into many kitchens in America. Television was the thing film could not fight. There was also a huge legal action against the studios in the 1950s, which said that it was a monopoly for studios to make films and own film theaters. So they were forced to sell off their theater chains. That spelled doom for all the major studios. But it was a gradual process. Now, here you see Louis B. Mayer toward the end of his time at MGM with the man who would very much first come in to take a sort of Thalberg role, playwright Dory Shari, who took over as director of production. He was a liberal Democrat. Louis B. Mayer was an ultra-conservative Republican. They butted heads on film after film. And one day, Louis B. Mayer called up the New York office and said, either it's Shari or me. And they said, you know what, Nick Skank said, pack up your bags and get the blank out, Louis. And the man who had made MGM was out on his ear without so much as a day's notice. Around this time, Judy Garland was trying to make the movie version of Annie Get Your Gun. Director Busby Berkeley once again drove her to a suicide attempt. She suffered a breakdown. She came back to try to work on the film, but just couldn't do it and had to be replaced by Betty Hutton. An American in Paris, one of the first films completed at MGM after Louis B. Mayer had left. When Gene Kelly and Vincent Minnelli walked into Dory Shari's office to try to explain the incredible ballet that would end that film, Dory Shari said, I have no idea what the hell you two are trying to do, but if you're trying to do it, it'll work. Just do it. And the result is, of course, an Academy Award-winning Best Picture and a screen classic. Here, by the way, is a rare photo I just had to share as part of this talk. Just realize stars are human, just like us. Gene Kelly never wanted you to see this picture of him without his hairpiece. But this wonderful, brilliant, talented genius was as human and as fragile as the rest of us. I'm just showing it for that purpose. Gigi was the last great musical to come out of MGM. There'd be others, but not quite at this level. It walked off with 10 Academy Awards, the most any film had ever won up to that time, with its magnificent story and its Lerner and Loewe score. Then came Ben-Hur, another multi-Academy Award winner, a huge hit for the studio, and a wonderful blaze of glory from its past. But by the time this film was made, MGM was having a hard time. By the time MGM released Dr. Zhivago, the studio was a ghost of itself. And then came 2001: A Space Odyssey in the late 60s. But by the late 60s, they were selling off studio assets just to keep the place alive. They sold off the back lot as real estate for developers, and all those marvelous sets came tumbling down. They sold off all the props. It is estimated that if a pair of the ruby slippers, which in the 1970s sold for $15,000, if a pair of them became available today, it is estimated that they would go for $2.5 million or more. And I would guarantee they would be more than that. 1974, That's Entertainment was a film that reawakened everyone's appreciation of the MGM legacy. The MGM hotels suffered a terrible setback in 1980 with the deadly fire at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. But the last MGM release that was a major musical in the 20th century, 1982's delightful Victor Victoria with Julie Andrews and Robert Preston. Ted Turner bought MGM Films in 1986 and created the wonderful Turner Classic Movies. Thank God it's there, which has helped keep these great films in our living rooms ever since. The old MGM lot is now owned by Sony Pictures Entertainment, which, in a bow to the studio's history, put the Wizard of Oz rainbow right over the entrance to the studio as you see it here. And now, of course, MGM has given its imprimatur, its logo, to a new sports betting app that's tied in with MGM hotels and casinos. So you can, Louis B. Mayer is probably laughing his head off in his grave that MGM has found a way to make money off of people's telephones. There's never quite been a studio that could begin to match the glamour, the talent, the sheer cultural impact of Metro Goldwyn Mayer. This past week, we lost one of the last living stars of MGM's golden age, Miss Jane Powell, who passed away on Friday at the age of 92. On December 7th of this year, I'm going to host a tribute here online for the Morristown Library, a tribute to Jane Powell. We're going to ask everyone to watch the movie Royal Wedding. We're going to then just open it up to a discussion of Jane Powell and all those great musicals. But I wanted to share one last film clip with you before I open to your questions tonight. In 1948, when they were building Jane up as a new star, they put her in the film A Date with Judy. And look at what they did. They didn't expect her to carry the film on her own. They surrounded her with stars. Wallace Beery, Elizabeth Taylor, Carmen Miranda, Xavier Cugat, and the incredibly handsome young Robert Stack. The plot of the movie, Elizabeth Taylor and Jane Powell go to the same school. They like the same boy. And they both want to date Robert Stack. They want him to take them to the big party that's coming up. And each one wants to sing a song at that party. Well, in the end, Liz Taylor gets Robert Stack. Jane Powell gets to sing. And here is the final just minute and a half of that movie. It's a great song. It's a great performance by Jane Powell. And it's a beautiful summary of what MGM would do. Do it big. Do it right, and give it class. With all of the stars listed here, and even a few moments of Wallace Beery singing. From 1948's A Date with Judy, it's a most unusual day.
I forgive you for everything. It's a most unusual day. It's like catching a bridal bouquet. It's like reaching the moon or composing a tune. It's a most unusual day. All the world is bursting with song, and I feel like I really belong. It's like finding a friend, having money to spend. It's a most unusual day. There are people greeting people. There is sunshine everywhere. There are people greeting people, and a feeling of spring in the air. It's a most unusual time. I keep feeling my temperature climb. If my heart won't behave in its usual way, there's only one thing to say. It's a most unusual, most unusual, most unusual day.
Before I take your questions, you may know I have a book out, Musical Theater, A History. You can find a copy at the Morristown Library. And I have a website, musicals101.com, which has all kinds of information about musicals on stage, screen, and television. It's all free. It's 800 pages of musical history. And it also has a list of my upcoming talks, including ones I'm doing for Morristown Library. And beyond that, I now have a web series. I and my friend, actor William McKay, have a show that we call musicals101.com's I'll Say. It's on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and put in musicals101.com, and you will see our existing episodes. And we do new live ones at least once a week. This week we're going to be reviewing Dear Evan Hansen. We're going to be doing an after party after the Tonys on Sunday night. And you're welcome to tune in live and take part with questions and comments. Let me end the screen share. And there we go. And open up to what anyone who has a question, please unmute yourself and ask. I guess that's the way we'll do it. Anyone who's got a question or comment, please say hello.
And also you can put it in the chat function
Yeah,
as
if
well.
you don't feel like talking, put it in the chat. I will quickly look at chat. Loving the film clips. Good, glad you did.
Hi, John.
Hello, dear boy. How are you?
I'm well. How are you? I wanted
Very
to
good.
ask you. One of the I don't know what the clip of it. What it was. You had a picture of one of the early. I think it was a picture of some from 1927. There was a lady on the side looking up. I'm not being very clear. It looked like was that the real Norma Desmond? If that's a real person's name?
Oh, no. Yeah, no, there never was a real Norma Desmond. It can honestly be said Norma Desmond was not based on any real performer.
Okay.
Yeah, she wasn't. There was never anyone who quite fit that picture. But that's
was that Gloria Swanson by any chance?
no, she didn't work at MGM. She was a Paramount girl.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, and that's something worth mentioning here. Every star tended to tie their career to the one studio that put them under contract during the golden years of the studio system. And what most people don't understand was, in the eyes of the studios, MGM, Paramount, Universal, all of them, they didn't invest in films. They invested in creating a star, because a star was a sellable product. And here's the perfect example. Clark Gable. Audiences would go to see anything that Clark Gable was in because it was a Clark Gable movie. And you knew that if you went to one of his movies, you'd get Clark being what the public perceived as Clark Gable. Manly, funny, romantic, but always, the guy who wins out in the end and and has basic decency in the end too. He didn't tend to play bad guys. You knew what you'd get with a Jimmy Cagney film over, at Warner's. You knew what you would get in a Bette Davis film. She would always play a particular kind of woman. You knew what to expect. The product was the star. The films were the frame that you sold the product in, and then you just kept selling the product in different frames, in new movies. There's a wonderful movie by one of my favorite authors. Her name is Janine Basinger, and she's done a movie called The Star System. And if you ever want to really learn how Hollywood operated, how they built stars and considered them the true product, it's a great book. I know that the Morristown Library has a copy of it, but many other libraries do. It's available on Kindle, and it's a great read. I mean, I sat there the first time I read it going, oh, now I get it. It's stuff that we just don't get. Those of us, myself included, who grew up long after that old studio system was just, history. But thank you for asking. Any other questions or comments, folks? Please feel free.
I have a question. We've had a couple of comments in the chat about the film clips, and I have to say that they were really great to watch.
Thank
now,
you.
the library does have the Canopy streaming service, and I know John and I have looked at what's available there, and there are some really great older films. And also the library, we do have a lot of the older films on DVD for people to watch, a lot of film classics. And because frequently we find they're not available on streaming services. But if you had to recommend some streaming services that have the greatest number of these old-fashioned classic films from the silent era through, the 50s, what would you recommend?
That's tough. There's not really one that focuses, like on the golden era. I still think your best bet for the golden era is to, have access to Turner Classic Movies, because so much shows up there. Turner Classic Movies on cable has, oh my God, they have a silent movie series every week where I can see films I've only heard about until now. There's really exceptional stuff on there. So that is still the lifesaver for those of us who love this stuff. You would be amazed at what is available on YouTube. So many great clips show up there. There are many wonderful interviews including some of the great interviews that have been done on Turner Classic Movies over the years. It's wonderful what shows up there. And those are the two things I would recommend. And neither one is really a streaming service. And I mean, you may not know this, but I've only just heard there may be a major strike in Hollywood before the end of the year because streaming services are trying to get all of the unions to work at cut rates because they're saying, oh, well, streaming services aren't making money yet. That's not the actors or the stagehands or the musicians' problem. If they're doing the work, they deserve to be paid. Period. Wherever they're doing it. If Apple TV is turning out schmigadoon, guess what? Everyone deserves to get full salary. And believe me, the union salaries are generous, but they need to be. These are people who put their lives into the art of making entertainment, and they deserve to be compensated justly for what they do. But that's a change in subject. I hope that answered your question, Marilyn.
Yeah, it did, because I didn't realize that Turner Classics movies was just MGM. Do they show other films other than MGM films?
Oh, yes, they do. But MGM was what they started with. Okay. You can find even Disney now has occasionally had some of their older films shown on Turner Classics because they know that is the core audience for film people. Years ago, I got to do the commentary on, I forget which movie. I'm one of the talking heads in the documentary on a DVD for a movie. And one of the other people in there was Robert Osborne, who was one of the narrators on Turner Classic Movies until he passed away a couple of years ago. Well, I bumped into him at a performance in New York, and he said, "Aren't we co-stars somewhere?" And I said, wow. And he was such a sweetheart to say it. He had been a young actor himself at one time before he became a film historian. He was a longtime friend of Mae West. The intermission where he and I met was just nowhere near long enough for us to share all the great stories we had to share. But what... great stuff on Turner. And now, the person who's now their head narrator is Mr. Mankiewicz, who comes from one of the great filmmaking families in Hollywood. He deserves to be there. Plus, he does a marvelous job. Whenever I pick a TV service for home, a cable service, there's one first rule that drives my partner crazy. Is Turner on the list? If TCM's not on the list, we're not going with them. Compared to today's movie stars, someone asks, approximately what did they make? Said another way, if these stars of the 30s and 40s were stars today, would they be making more? Oh, today they'd be making infinitely more. Infinitely more. Let me put it to you this way. If you were a star at one of the major studios, you got a weekly salary. A few of the stars, just a few, would get paid per film. But overwhelmingly, if you were Judy Garland or Mickey Rooney or one of these people we're talking about, you got a weekly salary at MGM, whether you were working that week or not. They would see to it you worked way more weeks than you didn't. They didn't allow big, long vacations. But what you made was a pittance compared to what the studio was making off of you. And if you were financially irresponsible like Mickey Rooney was, you need money? The studio will loan you money to buy a new home, to pay off an old wife, to cover your alimony that you didn't pay for 6 months. And we will give you that money at interest that any mafia loan shark would envy. And you had it taken out of your MGM. Your salary would be spent before you even made your next picture. It could become a real problem. For financially responsible stars who watched their pennies, you could become richer than Midas. Two movie stars of the 1930s, they were not MGM stars. They were Paramount stars. Bob Hope and Bing Crosby wound up at one time as two of the richest men in America because they invested their money in real estate. At one time, between the two of them, they owned almost the entire San Fernando Valley. So when that valuable real estate was being bought up by others, they earned tens of millions at a time when that was even more money than it is today. Just to pull on our heartstrings a little, oh, yes, there you are. My grandmother would have loved this. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah. So Sony Picture Studios was once MGM. Yes, their studio complex was originally MGM. So you will find the Thalberg building in what is now the Sony studio complex. What is the book and author I recommended about the star system? Janine Basinger, Basinger, and the book is called The Star System. Any book by Janine Basinger is fantastic. Just perfectly marvelous. We're going to do the Jane Powell lecture. Someone said it's going to be a lecture and a conversation about Jane Powell. That'll be on Tuesday, December the 7th. But to just let you know, I'm going to be doing a talk on Judy Garland just before Halloween on October 27th. We're on November 10th, middle of November, Singing in the Rain. Oh, Lord, what fun to talk about that movie again. I just got that one on Blu-ray. Oh, God, it's gorgeous. And to celebrate the holidays, December 15th, we're going to talk about one of MGM's greatest, The Wizard of Oz. Can you show your book and the other items you told about you? Oh, here, I'll show you my book. 1 second. Pardon my back.
John's book, he has it behind him on his bookshelf. And
it's always handy. This is it, Musical Theater, A History. I've also contributed to a number of other books, including the Cambridge Guide to Operetta, which just came out last year. In the middle of COVID, it came out just before that. But this is the one that's easier to get, and it's a history of musical theater, not just American musical theater, but musical theater in many parts of the world. And you can find it on either in the library, it's on Amazon. The paperback is not expensive, and it's also available in Kindle, even cheaper. Get it cheap. You know, I only get so much, so go ahead, get it cheap. Any other questions or comments, folks? It's been so great spending this time with you talking about MGM. Anyone else? Yes, Marie, unmute yourself. Okay, let me see.
Marie, you have to unmute yourself. Let me find you. Marie, where are you? I'm trying to unmute you.
There you go. She's unmuted.
Okay. Hi, Marie.
Hi, Marie D'Amico. I'm delighted to hear this presentation. I'm so sorry my husband didn't watch it because he's such a TCM lover. And I will definitely look you up on YouTube. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Some folks are saying they enjoyed it, and one person's asking, the first movie I remember was Song of the South. Where is it available? Unfortunately, the answer is nowhere. Song of the South, for those of you who don't know, is one of those wonderful Disney movies that mixes live action with animation, and it's best remembered for the song Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-ay, and I think it's a delightful film. But many people are uncomfortable with some of the black characters that are depicted in the film, either animated or the character of Uncle Remus. And I'm not going to comment on that. People are entitled to be offended if they're offended. And so the Disney company does not allow it to be seen or shown anywhere. I have an illegal copy of it that a friend gave me as a gift once, and those do float around. But unfortunately, they do not allow it to be shown in any way, shape, or form. Don't be surprised. This kind of thing has happened before. For many years, the movie Annie Get Your Gun would not be shown because Irving Berlin had heard complaints from Native American groups about the song I'm an Indian Too. Eventually, it was decided, you know what, just let the movie be seen. People are very, you got to be so worried now about people being offended, but you know, we got to try to make people happy when they're seeing entertainment. John, you mentioned musicals101.com. There was one other John Kenrick item you mentioned. No, just the book and the website. And my web series, which is on YouTube with my buddy Bill McKay. On Sunday night, the Tony Awards. Get ready for this, folks. Are you sitting down? I can see you all are. The Tony Awards begin at 7 p.m. on Paramount Plus streaming service. That's 2 hours of awards. At the end of those 2 hours, you have to switch over to CBS to see the next 2 hours. So there's 4 hours of award show ending around 11 p.m. Well, at 11 p.m., whether the show has ended or not, my buddy Bill and I will be on YouTube, live on camera from our homes. He is out on beautiful Long Island, and I'm here in lovely, glamorous Morristown, New Jersey. And we will be opening our after party to anyone who wants to join. You can take part in the conversation. We're going to have a lot to say about who wore what, who won what, and who lost what. And so that's not really a product. Well, what do I mean if it has ended or not? Well, William, that's my buddy Bill McKay, who I do the show with. It's always possible, Bill, that the show may run overtime. So even if the show is still going at 11, I say we get started, and we can dish it directly while it's happening right on network television if it's still going. Oh, goody, even more awards, he says. Okay. You can see we have a lot of fun talking about theater, about anything to do with theater. I want to thank all of you for taking part in this tonight. We're facing another autumn of this pandemic, another winter of it, and we're going to just get through it. We're going to keep doing these talks on Zoom. All of these talks that I'm doing for the library are free to the public, the whole world. If you know friends who you think would like to take part in some of the other talks that are coming up that I mentioned, come on in. The water's fine. And we will welcome them here and keep folks enjoying at home until we can enjoy in public together again safely. Thank you all so much for taking part. Stay safe, put your health ahead of politics, and let's all get through this in one piece. Thank you for being part of this tonight. Thank you. And Leo thanks you too. Good night, everybody.
And we will put this on YouTube. So
yep.
For anyone who's interested.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, John.
Okay. Good night.